my name is Michelle Beyer, your host of Addiction, Voices of Hope, heard here on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. Addiction Voices of Hope is presented by this month's sponsor, the Phoenix Recovery Support Services. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please go to my website and email me, addictionvoicesofhope.com. And don't forget to like us on Facebook. Today my guest is Steve Jerestes from the Smith House, which the Smith House has younger adolescents. They focus on the teens younger than 19, and also the Bright House, which is the female house. Hi, Steve. How are you today?
Hi, Michelle. I'm doing well. How are you today?
I am great. Steve, you know, is there a big call for teenagers? I mean, are you full?
For teenagers in treatment?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Teens and addictions is something that we've noticed is steadily getting worse as times go.
Okay.
Especially, we're seeing a huge increase in abuse of prescription medications, things like cough syrup and DXM,
Really?
and new designer synthetic drugs such as K2, bath salts, and things of that nature. And we're seeing a huge increase in that, as well as a lot of increase in heroin use among adolescents too. So treatment for adolescents is something that's extremely needed in our communities these days. And for the Smith House and Bright House, we have a residential treatment center for them, and it's something that we really need these days.
So about how many men and women does each house hold?
Well, the Smith House takes a maximum of approximately 18 young men, and the Bright House is certified to house 12 young girls.
Okay.
So that's the maximum that we have. And actually right now, neither house is full. We do have some openings available right now.
Well, that's a good thing that you have openings, because that means it's not over. You know, like the women's house, they're packed. There's a waiting list.
Part of it is the fact that the Bright House is very new. The Bright House just opened in I believe it was December, so it's still a new program. So I think that there's a lot of communities out there that don't know about this resource. I was doing some research a couple of weeks ago, and I found out that there are less than 20 residential treatment centers for young girls in the entire state of Ohio.
Wow.
So what that tells me is that we should be full. Because you can't tell me that you can't find 12 girls in the state of Ohio that really need this help. So part of it is just getting the word out to communities, to treatment agencies, to juvenile courts and things like that. And the Smith House is sort of the same way. When the Smith House first opened, we were specifically a halfway house for people coming out of the Department of Youth Services correctional facilities.
Okay.
And it's only been in the past few years that we have opened our services up to anybody from the community that needs it. So part of it is we just need to get the word out there that we're here. We're here. We're right here in Stark County, and we're ready to help out these young men and women that need those addiction recovery services.
Now, when they come into the house, do they go to Quest Main out on Market first, get an assessment, and then come into the house?
Sometimes they do. A lot of times what happens is because a lot of our young men and women that come into these programs are involved in the court systems already. So a lot of them are locked up in detention centers or in the correctional facilities. So what we do is we have a couple of people who go out to those facilities to do the screenings themselves. So they'll do an assessment right in the detention center to see if they're appropriate, if they need our services, if they would fit well with our program.
And do they come in and some of them have to detox off of heroin or some other drug?
We're not certified as a medical facility. Neither of those places are, so we try to avoid that whenever possible. It does happen. We got a young man in the Smith House right now who came in and detoxed from heroin right when he came in. And it's a difficult thing to do, again, because we don't have the medical training and facilities to do that. So we try to avoid that whenever possible. So if we have somebody that's going through that, we like them to go through that before they come into treatment.
Right. Now, you're the head counselor there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see a lot of the kids believing that smoking pot's okay?
Absolutely. That's probably the
crazy.
number one faulty belief that we have to break through
Yeah.
with the young men at the Smith House and young women at the Bright House too, especially nowadays with marijuana being legalized in a couple of states. The things we hear all the time is, man, what are you going to do when it's legalized here in Ohio? I mean, are you guys going to be out of a job because you're not going to be able to treat? It should be legal here. You know, it's all natural. It's, I mean, all the excuses that they say. I mean, they say those things all the time. You know, and our response a lot of times is, well, one, if it's legalized, it wouldn't be for you because you're too young. You know, but second of all, what we try to do is we try to help them see what the marijuana does to them. You know, help them understand that it's not just that they smoke that's the issue. It's what they do when they smoke. It's how that affects their mindset that changes things for them. And a lot of times we can be pretty successful at least getting them an open mind to something along that line.
And that's interesting because yesterday I had a conversation with my 17-and-a-half-year-old daughter and her friend. And they were arguing with me about marijuana. Oh, you don't get in DUIs, you don't do this, you don't do that, people are nice, this and that. And they see no repercussions coming from it. They think it's a great drug. And then also I say it's a gateway. And they're saying, oh no, once we can't get that high anymore, we stop. I'm like,
Yeah, it's funny how, especially with marijuana, research kind of stands on both sides of the fence. You've got people that say, well, look here, studies prove that people that smoke marijuana are much more likely to try other drugs than people that don't smoke marijuana. But then there's also studies that say most people that smoke marijuana do not go on to do other drugs too. So you've got different studies that are basically contradicting each other. Or, well, I mean, they're not contradicting, but they're showing two different things. And so it's difficult, because especially when you get somebody that's a real marijuana lover. I mean, they know all the studies, they know everything, and they're ready to just, you know, come right at you and prove you wrong, because, you know, they like to be smarter than adults. They want to try to prove that they're smarter than us. And so that's why, you know, one of the things we try to listen and say, you know what, you're right, you're absolutely right. There are studies that say that. But let's take a look at what that looks like for you, you know, and try to make it more personal for them.
There's a lot of people that I do know that need marijuana just to function in life. But it is a gateway drug. It does lead into other things, and when you're getting these boys and these girls into recovery and they're fighting with you, what approaches are you using with them? I mean, you just touched on a couple, but...
Right. A lot of it is about awareness, bringing awareness to them about what's going on, because they say things like, well, you know, marijuana isn't addicting. There's no physical addiction to it. And then sometimes you have to ask them the right question. And, you know, because they say, look, I never went on from marijuana to do anything else. And I'll say, okay, you know, does it take you a little bit longer to get high than it did when you first started? Oh, no, it takes me the same length of time. Okay, but what kind of marijuana are you smoking? You know, because there's all the different strains of marijuana now. You know, well, when you were smoking, when you first started smoking, could you get high off the Reggie, which is the low-grade marijuana? You know, but now what? You need the Kush, you need the Loud, you need, you know, all these higher potency strands. Is that what you smoke now to get high? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So what does that say then? Okay, you know, so a lot of times it's just trying to point things out, but more often than not, it's about building relationships and listening to them, because the young men and young women that come into these programs, most of them have basically spent their whole lives being told by other people, you know, what to do, or they have people that don't care about them at all. Nobody ever listens to them, and so so as a result of that, you know, they rebel against everything. They make the poor choices that they do. So when you can actually sit down with them and listen to their story, and instead of just saying, well, you smoke marijuana, you're a bad person, you know, why do you pop pills like that, why do you do these things, you listen to their story, And one of the things that we do in the Bright House and the Smith House is we ask them to write their life stories and share them with everybody pretty early on in their treatment,
Nice.
so that we get an understanding of what they've been through.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things have you been through? Because when you listen to their stories and you find out things, you find out about the abuse that they've been through or that they've witnessed, the divorces that they somehow think are their fault, or
Okay.
the fact that they lost somebody close to them, or they never felt accepted by their families, and so they turn to the streets to find that acceptance. You start finding out there's all this going on that has made that has got them to the point where they're looking for something different. They're looking for something to fill that void. And as we know, drugs are great at covering up things.
Yeah, that's for sure. Oh, so when they, how did, oh, I guess we have to go to a break. That's
Okay.
But when we come back, I'd like to know what type of approach you take with them. I read a holistic approach.
Absolutely.
So when we come back, we'll kind of touch on that. Don't forget to go to my Facebook page and like me. Please like me. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Addiction, Voices of Hope. I am your host, Michelle Beyer, here on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. When we left, we were talking to Steve, the lead counselor at Quest Recovery and Prevention Services at the Smith House, which is young men, adolescents, and also the Bright House, which is young females. And Steve, we were talking about how you get them in, how do you get them into recovery? I mean, what approach do you use?
Well, and this is one of the things that I'm very proud of for the Smith House and the Bright House, because we take a very unique approach to helping them in their recovery. Because, like I spoke about before the break, a lot of times the young men and women that are there, they're in there primarily because of their addiction. But what we know is that addiction, it bleeds into other areas of their life. So they're there with behavioral issues, involvement in the courts. They're there with mental health issues, with
Okay.
with trauma issues and everything like that. So, and a lot of them, they're behind in their schooling. They have no job skills. They have there's so much going on. How do you focus on all of that? Well, what we have is a very unique program, and we use something that we call social responsibility therapy to help them. It's a very holistic approach to it. So I'm going to put you on the spot because this is what I do with the guys when they first come in and they're asking about the program, and I'm telling them what we do.
Okay.
What I want you to do right now is I want you to think about if you could handpick the perfect friend, coworker, spouse, the perfect person that would always be there for you. What kind of person would they be? What sort of values or personality would they have?
Wow, you did put me on the spot. They'd have to be like Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way.
Okay, well, what about her? Tell me more about that.
They would have to. Golly, you did put me on the spot. Loving family. Very respectful. That type of relationship.
Okay, keep going. Well, yeah, what kind of
no
personality?
cheating, no lying.
Okay.
Straight up communication, which a lot of relationships do lack in communication.
Absolutely.
That's probably the biggest downfall of relationships.
Right.
So, am I off the spot now?
No. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. You were wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let me just, if I could take what you said and let me just sort of paraphrase it a little bit. But if you were going to design like the perfect friend or spouse or coworker, you would want somebody that was honest with you, that would tell you the truth and not lie. You'd want somebody that you could trust, right? I mean, somebody that would follow through on what they said. Someone that's loyal, like you said, that's going to stand by you and stick with you through everything. You said loving, so you want somebody that would show concern for you and care about you, right?
Right.
And you said, and you also said somebody that that's responsible, somebody that shows respect to other people, right?
Right.
Okay. So now I'm going to ask you, this is the $1,000,000 question. So if what you're looking for in other people is honesty, trust, loyalty, concern, and responsibility, what do you think other people are looking for from you?
The same thing.
The same thing.
Right.
Right? And that's the approach that we take at the Smith House and the Bright House. When you ask people that, that's what everybody's looking for. Everybody's looking for somebody that tells the truth, someone they can trust, that'll be loyal, that won't cheat or won't stab them in the back, someone that actually cares about them, and somebody that takes care of things that they're supposed to. That's what we're all looking for. So what we tell them is, you know, when they say, well, what's in it for me? What's in it for you is if you show these values, you're going to get those in return. It goes back to the whole you've got to give respect to get respect thing. And so everything that we do, and there's a lot of ways that we go about trying to hit it, but everything that we do comes back to instilling these core values into the young men and women that we serve, making them so that when they're making choices, they're thinking about, you know, I need to be honest right now. I need to show that I can be trusted and learn who to trust, because, I mean, let's face it, you can't trust everybody. But at the same time, we can't go through life trusting nobody, because then what happens when we need somebody to turn to? You know, so we need to find someone to trust, but we need to find those right people. We need to learn how to be loyal, how to stand up for people and the things that we believe in, because as the old saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we need to show concern for other people, to care about others, and being responsible. That's probably one of the biggest things. That goes into like the communication that you were talking about. So if you think about it, almost any positive quality that you can think about can be summed up by those 5 values. So every single thing that we do in those houses comes back to that. Those are the behaviors, those are the values that we're looking for. Because guess what? If you're showing those things, are you going to be are you going to make the choice to smoke marijuana or to pop pills or to drink or anything like that?
You would hope not.
You would hope not. No, if those are the values that you're living by, using drugs wouldn't fit in with those values. If you have those values, are you going to hang out with friends and break into cars and, you know, get into fights and join gangs? Probably not.
Right.
If you're showing those values, are you going to be overcome with depression and anxiety and things like that? Probably not. Now, it's very basic, you know, and what we know from research is there's a lot of things going out there that hit different things like anxiety and trauma and depression and things like that. And so when we get a young man or young woman that present with those problems, we focus on those 2 specifically. But by giving them a good core set of values, what happens is they learn how to make decisions for themselves. Rather than simply being told what to do, they learn how to decide for themselves what the right thing is.
Which is important, because when they do get out of house and they, let's say, go to college, they're making really big life choices there.
Absolutely.
So how long do they stay in house for?
Typically, the programs last about 90 days, but it's based on their progress rather than by day. This isn't like jail where they just tick off the days and when your time's up, you get out. For both programs, what we do is we break them down into 4 different levels, and for each level, you're asked to do a certain amount of work, show certain behaviors, you know, complete certain tasks, and when you do that, then you move on to the next level. And once you've reached the highest level of the program, then you finish everything that you need to, and then you're allowed to leave the program.
Okay, well, that music means we must go to a break again.
Okay.
So when we come back, we'll be talking with Steve, and we'll get a little bit more into detail about the holistic approach that they take. This is Michelle Beyer on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. We'll be right back. Voices of Hope. I am your host, Michelle Beyer, here on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. When we left, we were talking with Steve, who is the lead counselor at Quest Recovery and Prevention Services at Smith House, and the Bright House is also the teen female version of what you do, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When we left, we were also talking about the stay, the 90 days. Do some people stay long? Do some of the kids stay longer?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Again, like I said, we focus on their progress as opposed to their time. Most residents can get out in approximately 90 days. You know, usually between 90 and 100 days they can get out of there. We do have some that stay longer. I was taking a look at some of our statistics. I think the longest stay that we had this past year, I think somebody was there for, I think it was 159 days, just because they just reached a point where they weren't necessarily doing anything bad, nothing worthy of getting kicked out of the program, but
Right.
they just weren't doing anything. And so when that happens, we really try to sit down and motivate them and come up with a plan for how to move through and finish.
Mm-hmm. Can you get kicked out? How can you get kicked out
Oh,
of the
well,
program?
the number one way to get kicked out is to be violent. We have a zero tolerance policy for violence because we want to promote a safe and secure atmosphere at these places. You know, in the detention centers and correctional facilities, I mean, the guys will tell me that fights break out every single day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we don't want that kind of atmosphere. So what we do is we tell them, look, if you're going to stay here, the number one cardinal rule is no violence.
Mm-hmm.
And we take that very seriously because we work with a lot of deep issues and they have to feel safe. They have to feel safe enough to open up and share with everybody. And they can't feel safe if a fight's going to break
Yeah,
out.
that's the truth. If you have a question for Stephen, please give us a call at 330-492-6881. And if once they're done with the program, where do they go from there? Do they get sent home?
Yeah, usually what happens is when they finish the program, we send them back home to their community. But what we do is we always hook them up with what we call an aftercare plan. And what that consists is we try to send them back to the community to an outpatient treatment center so that we're not just, you know, when they come to us, they're getting 24 hours of treatment 7 days a week for 90 days or longer. And, you know, and how dumb would it be to just say, okay, great, you finished, bye, good luck, see you later.
That's not going to work.
No, no. So what we do is, you know, for example, if it's somebody here in Stark County, what we would do is we would let them go home and say, okay, now what we need you to do is we need you to go back to Quest's Canton office, a couple of days a week, whether it's for intensive outpatient or just a couple of days a week for individual counseling and an aftercare relapse prevention group. So we send them back into the community already connected to some kind of treatment agency. We also help them connect with the 12-step communities in their area. We give them a list of different meetings in the area. We encourage them to go, and as of late, we've been really encouraging them to get a sponsor or recovery coach before they go to really help them out. We also try to meet with the families before they go to really help them understand that transition back home. And you know, and typically most of them will continue on probation or parole after they leave anyway. They usually don't get cut off the system right away, so they have that following them too. We'll hook them up with other like case management opportunities, you know, depending on, so that they get the help that they need. We help connect them. We get their schooling situated before they go, because they do school while they're with us through Trekka Digital Academy, which is an online schooling. But when they go back, what they can do is they can stay online and do Trekka Digital Academy or transfer back to their home brick and mortar school. But we help them with that ahead of time. Also, when they go, depending on where they are, you know, how old they are and what's going on, we might help them, help them create a job resume or go out and fill out job applications so that they've already had some connections with their community that way with finding a job or something that's going to keep them busy. So we don't send them out unprepared. We do everything we can to give them the best chance of success when they finish.
Well, that's awesome, and that's really a smart. I know there's a lot of places that just say, okay, goodbye. Do they have AA meetings for kids? You know, for young adults? I mean, I've never seen any.
There are very few and far between. One thing that we're doing right now is we actually, right now we host a 12-step meeting in-house, one at the Smith House, one at the Bright House, for the residents themselves. And one of the things is we're growing as an agency, is our hope is to eventually open those meetings up to the young men and young women respectively in the community, so that they have a young person's meeting to go to. Because one of the biggest things I hear when the guys go to a 12-step meeting, oh, it's all a bunch of old
Yeah.
people getting around talking about, for me, addiction, I lost my wife, I lost my truck, I lost my dog, I lost my kids. It sounds like a bad country song every week, and
There's nothing for them to relate to.
and there is, but they don't see it. Is the
Okay.
thing. Some of them really connect well with the 12-step community, but a lot of them they can't get past that age difference. So that's why what we're trying to do, we're trying to build that up in our programs right now so that we have something that they can go to. Because there's a few out there, but not very many.
So do you think maybe we should start thinking about setting up some younger AA meetings for the teens?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that'll be my next mission. So, well, we have run out of time today, but I want you to remember this one thing. Addiction does not just affect the addict, it affects the entire family and their children. And in this case, the parents and what they do may have just affected the kids that are going into this house.
You're so right.
I want to thank Steve for coming out, my lead counselor for the Quest Recovery and Prevention Services, the Smith House, and we were also talking about the Bright House, which is for females. And I would like to thank my sponsor today, which is Quest Recovery and Prevention Services. I also would like to thank Copycat Graphics. A special thank you goes to them. And this is all the time we have for today. This is Michelle Beyer for Addiction Voices of Hope. I am your host on WNPQ 95.9 The Light. Have a great day and love yourself first.